This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsa Hone, and it's Wednesday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. Today is St. Patrick's Day, and I figured that would be a good time to take a look at the best green creatures. Green is a color that has a lot of its power concentrated in creature cards, so this list is pretty stacked. To be eligible for this list, a creature had to be mono green and, well, that's it. A creature could have a more complicated color identity. In other words, they could be green creatures with an activated ability of another color, but they can't be more than one color themselves for this list. In all, that means there were 1,999 cards eligible for this list, and in this video, we'll look at the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A top 8 at a Pro Tour, Players Tour, Mythic Championship, Mythic Invitational, Legacy or Vintage Championship is worth 2 points, and a top 8 at a Grand Prix or Magic Fest is worth 1 point. Alright, let's get to the list. At number 10, it is Eternal Witness. While she's only a 3-mana 2/1, the Witness has a powerful enter the battlefield trigger, as getting back any card from your graveyard is great. There are not many other creatures that can return a card of any type. Most have some sort of restriction, but not Eternal Witness. Her ability also means she often represents a 2-for-1, which is one of the best things you can do in Magic. Her most frequent homes across all formats have been combo decks that are reliant on a few specific cards. The Eternal Witness gives these decks a way to get back a combo piece that might have been removed. In Standard, for example, she was played in Astral Slide decks that really needed that enchantment to be able to do its thing. It also didn't hurt that the deck could easily blink her to use her ability repeatedly to get back other things from the graveyard. In Extended, she was played in Olurin and Doran decks, which, as you might imagine, were highly reliant on their eponymous cards. She was also played in Legacy Olurin decks. Modern is where the Witness has done the most work, largely in toolbox decks that can tutor up creatures in their library with ease, and they generally also have a 2-card combo that can win them the game in an instant. The most infamous deck like this was Birthing Pod, but after the pod was banned in Modern, Collected Company and Court of Calling took its place. The Witness is great because you can search it up at the precise moment when you really need to get something back from your graveyard. The Witness is very likely to continue to add to its score in the future, but there are some cards that aren't too far behind her that are still gaining points too, namely Sakura Tribe Elder, Primeval Titan, and Reclamation Sage, so she's far from guaranteed to remain on this list. At number 9, it is Dryad Arbor, which is a land but also a creature, so it's technically a green card. Dryad Arbor is pretty unique since it always has all the qualities of both lands and creatures, and there is sort of a mixed bag of upsides and downsides that come with that. For example, unlike most lands, it cannot tap for mana the turn it comes into play because it has Summoning Sickness. It can also be affected by damage-based board sweepers. However, also unlike other lands, it can block and attack. It can also be searched up by creature tutor spells. Overall, this combination of things comes together to make Dryad Arbor a pretty powerful land, although there were no good ways to abuse it in either block or standard, so it gained no points there. It combines really nicely with cards like Life from the Loam, which can get you lands back from your graveyard, because this land is actually a creature, and that's some serious value. It's gained points alongside Life from the Loam in Extended, Modern, and Legacy. Another card that is commonly played alongside the Arbor is Green Sun's Zenith. You can pay a single green mana with the Zenith to tutor up an Arbor and put it into play, which results in 3 mana by turn 2. You can also use Zenith to tutor it up in response to an Edict effect, a line of play that is not all that uncommon in some formats. Green Sun's Zenith decks were a bit too good in Modern, partly as a result of the combo with Dryad Arbor, and ultimately it was banned in the format, and it's still banned today. However, it is still played with the Zenith in Legacy and still has enough upside in other formats that it's likely it will continue to gain points. At number 8, it is Obstinate BALOTH. The BALOTH isn't all that impressive at first glance. 4-mana 4/4 that gains you 4 life isn't bad, but it's also not something you would imagine having 90 points. But the BALOTH gets a huge power upgrade thanks to its additional effect. If your opponent does something to make you discard the BALOTH, you just put it into play for free, and a 0-mana 4/4 that gains you 4 life is pretty silly. That's some nice upside on a card that already has a kind of reasonable baseline. Obviously, how good the BALOTH is really depends on the format. The card is pretty good against aggressive decks because of the life gain, and pretty good against various black decks that are interested in discard effects. Luckily, there are enough formats out there where decks that do those things are around, and that has led to the BALOTH gaining those 90 points over the years. The BALOTH is perhaps most well known for being a great foil for Liliana of the Veil and Jund decks in general in both Extended and Modern. They tend to run a few discard effects, and the BALOTH is a great way to punish Liliana, especially, since if he comes down for free as a result of her discard effect, the beast is very likely to kill her on the next turn. Like most of the cards on this list, the BALOTH is going to continue to accumulate points going forward. At number 7, it is Den Protector, who is often amusingly referred to as Maternal Witness. The Protector can bring cards back from your graveyard when she turns face up, and she comes with an evasive ability that actually makes her kind of an imposing creature. It was really easy to get 2-for-1s with Den Protector, and that made her a heavily played card during her time in Standard. She was especially nasty when combined with Death Mist Raptor. Turning her face up, getting something back from your graveyard to your hand, and returning the Raptor to the battlefield is insane, and that's the engine that powered a lot of decks in Standard, especially Green-White Megamorph. She was heavily played in Standard, showing up in just about all the green decks, and that allowed her to gain over 100 points in just that format. She's pretty much the only card on this list that isn't actively adding up points, and while her Standard performance between 2015 and 2016 has been enough to make the list so far, I don't know that it bodes well for her in the long term. At number 6, it is THRAGTUSK. This beast comes with all kinds of value, gaining you 5 life when it enters the battlefield and making a 3/3 beast token when it leaves the battlefield. That's a great return on an investment of 5 mana, and also a pretty formidable way to make life difficult for aggressive decks, as the life gain and 2 sizable bodies are pretty big roadblocks for them. One notable thing about THRAGTUSK is that the ability that makes a 3/3 beast triggers no matter how it leaves the battlefield. This means that exile effects don't keep it from triggering, which also means you can combine it with flicker effects to get both the life gain and the beast token triggers. In Standard, combining the Tusk with Restoration Angel was particularly nasty. In Modern, THRAGTUSK saw a lot of play in the now banned Birthing Pod deck, where it was a particularly nice creature to search up and sacrifice to the pod, since it gave you value in addition to getting you another creature from your deck. More recently, it's been played in Tron decks, as it helps give them more time to assemble their lands, in addition to being easily castable by the deck. THRAGTUSK will continue to gain points in Modern going forward. At number 5, it is Courser of KRUPHIX. The Courser comes with a reasonable defensive body as a 3-mana 2/4 and gains you a life every time you play a land, which pairs well with the ability to play lands off the top of your library. That last ability is really what makes the Courser powerful, as it allows you to effectively draw extra cards. Because you can play lands off the top of your library, this helps you get closer to drawing non-lands, while also adding to your resources in play, and that's just great. The life gain effect here may seem a little bit like an afterthought, but gaining life all game long is pretty effective, especially against more aggressive decks who struggle to attack through the Courser anyway. Courser of KRUPHIX was heavily played in both Block and Standard, formats where it was a staple, appearing in just about every green deck there was. However, the Courser has proven itself outside of those formats too. It's been played in Modern, where it's gained the most points in Jund and Valakut decks. It has also already gained 6 points in the Pioneer format, where it's been played the most in Sultai Delirium decks. Courser seems primed to continue to put up more points in Pioneer. At number 4, it's Scavenging OOZE. This OOZE brings a ton of value for a very low investment. While it starts out as a bear, it can then start gobbling up cards in graveyards, gaining you life, and making itself larger. The OOZE is great because it lets you hate on the graveyard while also getting some additional value out of the ability. It has a reasonable baseline, and that makes it the kind of graveyard hate you can run in your main deck, because a creature like this, that can get progressively larger, is worth a slot anyway. While it has been played in Standard every time it's been printed, Modern is really where the card has made a name for itself over the years. It's basically a staple in green decks in Modern, with Jund and Abzan being common places for it. It has played a similar role in Legacy, Pioneer, and Historic. At number 3, it is Tireless Tracker, one of my favorite cards ever. Tireless Tracker is an insane value engine. You get a clue token every time you have a land into the battlefield, and that means it's incredibly difficult for an opposing player to ever come out ahead against Tireless Tracker, because generally, she nets her controller a single card at worst, and not only does she make all those sweet clue tokens, she also gets even bigger when you use them. This makes her simultaneously a value engine and a win condition, not something most 3-drops can say. That level of power has proven good enough to give Tireless Tracker considerable success in multiple formats. It saw a ton of play in Standard, pretty much being featured in any green deck you can imagine, but it's also gone on to be an important card in Modern, where it's been featured in a variety of decks, ranging from aggro decks based around Collected Company, to Scapeshift and Primeval Titan combo decks, to more mid-rangey decks like Jund or The Rock. It's also found some success in Legacy Lands, which, as you may have guessed, runs a ton of lands, so the tracker spits out a ton of clues. More recently, it has also gained points in Pioneer, in aggro decks, as well as Sultai Delirium. The tracker will keep gaining points in the future, which will probably at least let it hold on to its spot on this list. At number 2, I've included 2 cards because they're so similar, Birds of Paradise and Llanowar Elves. Birds of Paradise is the legitimate number 2, and if Llanowar Elves had its own slot, it would be at number 5. There are, of course, other mana dorks in Magic's history than these two, but these are the only two who had enough points to make this list. Both of them have very long histories, as they were both printed in Magic's very first set back in 1993, and have received tons of reprints. These 1-mana creatures can tap for mana, and that means that they help you stay ahead of your opponent when it comes to how powerful your spells are, since you can cast 3-mana things on turn 2, 4-mana things on turn 3, and so forth. They have had multi-format success over the years, and they're likely to continue to gain points, maintaining their spot on this list. That said, I don't think they will ever catch the number 1 card, which has a score over 100 points higher than Birds of Paradise, and that card is Tarmogoyf, which probably doesn't come as a huge surprise to anyone. Tarmogoyf has power equal to the number of card types in all graveyards and toughness equal to that number +1. It doesn't do anything flashy, doesn't have an enter the battlefield ability or any sort of disruptive effect. He's just a huge 2-drop on many board states. In decks that can quickly put things in the graveyard, it isn't unusual for the Goyf to be a 4-5 or larger on turn 2. That's not an easy thing to deal with, even in non-rotating formats. Tarmogoyf is considered one of the best 2-drops in the game, and it is all based on just being a super efficient vanilla creature. Tarmogoyf has gained points in every format it is possible to gain points in, seeing play in pretty much any deck with green in it, but he tends to really flourish in decks with graveyard themes or sub-themes for obvious reasons. Tarmogoyf has a firm hold at the number 1 spot on this list, he has a huge lead, and he's still accumulating points. Well, those are the 10 green creatures who have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. If you're interested in buying some green cards this St. Patrick's Day, you can find individual Card Kingdom links for each of them in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you need to catch up on some MTG Top 10s you might have missed, you should see a playlist on your screen now. Also, if you enjoy hearing me talk about the history of Magic, you should give my other YouTube channel a chance. It focuses on real-world history, and you might like hearing me talk about that too. The channel is called Need to Hone History, and you should see a link for it on the screen shortly. You can also find the link in the description. Thanks for watching.